Today we're going to talk about the elements and principles of design. These are the tools and rules that can help create strong artwork. There will be an exit ticket you have to complete as well as a quiz later, so make sure that you're paying attention. Notice that there's a link on the bottom right in which you could follow along and take some notes if you'd like to do so. I always suggest doing this as it will help you later, and it's why I put the link in the presentation for class. You can go back in the recording and catch things you may have missed later, and you can also handwrite the notes in your sketchbook or on the printed Cornell note sheets in class. The first thing we need to consider is how the elements and principles can be used to defend the choices made in your artwork. It's why we ask you to reflect on it in each submission and expect you to highlight the terminology you've been learning about in class. Another important item is talking about the strong work Venn diagram. Here you can see it on the left. Hopefully what you can see is that using the elements and principles is just one part of creating strong artwork. You also have to know and be able to design around the rule of thirds, experiment with media and techniques, and communicate something about the larger world around you for your work to be really strong. It's just like working out or practicing for whatever sport you're in. It makes you stronger by applying good and sometimes new and different techniques than what you did before in order to get better. If you look over at the image on the right, there is an Elements and Principles of Design logo. When we think of the elements of art, we are thinking about 7 things: line, shape, value, space, color, texture, and form. These are the items or elements that we use to create objects and pictures. Likewise, the 8 principles of design help govern how the elements are used to make work stronger and more aesthetically pleasing to our human eyes. The principles of design are balance, contrast, emphasis, proportion, repetition, variation, movement, and unity. So first we're going to talk about the elements of art. The elements are what are used to create a design, and the principles dictate how they're used. Depending on your understanding of these terms and how to apply them, you will create works that vary in success. The key is to keep practicing because you'll get better the more you practice, just like you would with a sport, a musical instrument, or a language. Line is the first element of art. It is a continuous mark made on a surface by a utensil or tool. It is longer than it is wide and can vary in width. A line can also be created by material, such as the shell of the snail that is created with a strip of metal. The snail is a line that now shows its 3D form. Next we have shape. Shape is a line that is closed upon itself. It has length and width. Flat 2D shapes can be used to create larger objects, such as these circles that were used in a repeated pattern, making this bracelet really strong. Color is how light reflects off an object and interacts with human vision, causing us to see things like red, yellow, and blue. Enameling is one way to add color to metalwork that we will be using in one of our first projects. Here we have value. Value is the lightness or darkness of a surface, the whitest white, blackest black, and each gray in between. It can also be applied to color. An interesting way to add color to jewelry is by cold connecting a drawing to a piece. Space is an element that surrounds us. It can be either positive or negative. Look at this elephant sculpture on the left. You can see through the negative space through the ears and legs. Those spaces would change as you walk around this sculpture. To create texture, we are talking about the quality of a surface as it relates to the sense of touch. You really have to think about how to get different textures in metals. This is often achieved by using hammers or punches. Form is the surface of an object as described three-dimensionally. The image on the right is a great example of someone using flat metal shapes that have been formed and then connected together to create the headdress that you see. Moving on to the principles of design, you should notice that these terms are how the elements are used in a piece of artwork to create the object that you're making. Contrast refers to the arrangement of opposite elements, light versus dark colors, rough versus smooth textures, large versus small shapes, to create visual interest, enrichment, and drama. While different types of metal create the contrast you see here between the brass and silver, you can also see differences in the textures in those metals, which enhance the contrast even further. Moving on to unity, it is a term that means oneness, or how the artwork works together as a whole in terms of the other elements of design, such as shape, color, line, texture, etc. The repetition of shapes and colors in these earrings help unify the form. The other unifying factor here is the 2 silver wires used to hold the mokume. Emphasis is where your eye goes first in a piece of art. It's also called the focal point and center of interest. In this pierced example, your eye probably goes to the bird first and then moves to the tree branch the bird is sitting on. Balance is a sense of stability in a piece of artwork. It can be asymmetrical, symmetrical, or radial. The brass squiggled wire creates asymmetrical balance because they are partway down the larger rectangle, creating a heavier feel to the bottom of these earrings. However, as a set of earrings, they also appear to almost be symmetrical. Repetition and variation are often used together when designing objects. Often repetition is used first and is the use of an element of design used over and over in a piece of artwork. Here you can see the circles and ovals are used multiple times throughout this pendant. Variation can be defined by changes, large or small, in the repetition of a piece of art. This can create pattern. For example, this pendant has circles in it as well, but the smaller inner circles have stones in them, as well as circles of varying sizes to create interest. Next, we have movement. While movement is defined as the path one's eye follows while looking at a piece of art, it's successfully used when the artist arranges objects in a piece with diagonals so the viewer's eye is forced to move around the piece. This sculpture is encompassed by a circle, but the squiggly, pointy blob in the middle has appendages that go in several diagonal directions, which move your eye from one part of the circle to another. The tie at the bottom of the circle is also attached in a woven diamond pattern, making the viewer's eye go from one part of the circle to another. Last but not least, we have proportion, which is how the size and shape of one object compare to those around it. Looking at this necklace, the spheres used to create it are all different sizes, but still look good on the neck because the largest of those spheres isn't so big that it overshadows the woman's neck and shoulders. Although craftsmanship is not an element or principle of design, it is important to note that the skill or neatness in which you create something often is noticed by other people. The more you take pride in making high-quality objects, the more your ability and confidence you have. You will also probably be able to sell your artwork or even do that type of art as a side hustle later in life.